Hello, my wonderful visionaries, and welcome to the channel. Today I am with Vincent. Thank you so much for joining me. Vincent is a single indie dev for, and I'm going to get this right, Antique Gear Games.
Yes, correct.
You're working on your title Void Wizard, and it's great to speak to you. I always enjoy speaking to indie devs, learning about their journey, what development is like, because this is hard, right?
Yeah.
And you guys make it look so easy, and you guys inspire me. So,
thank you.
Tell me about your journey. Have you always made games before? How did you get into games?
So obviously not always, right? Like when you come out of the womb, you like can't really think very much. So it was several years ago. My mom actually suggested I take a free class at the library where they taught kids how to make games. And so for the first class, they actually taught us to use, I think, Lua to make Android games. And that kind of interested me, but for me it kind of took too long. I was really impatient. But the next class, they taught us how to use Construct. And Construct was just like drag and drop, basically, right? You still have to make a good game in Construct, you have to put in a lot of work. But if I wanted a character that like moves around, I just say, okay, I'm gonna make a character and I'm gonna make it move around. So that was really good for my impatient brain. And so I made a lot of games, quite a few games in Construct, small games. And at first I wanted like every game to be the next big thing. I don't know where I got that idea. I think a lot of people do though, right? They're like, okay, I've got a great idea for a game, but ideas are not design, right? Ideas are a very important part of design, I think, but ideas are not design.
So just to kind of touch on that then, do you mean that every game idea you had was going to be a massive, big, sprawling JRPG with romance and
no, not really not really some big complicated thing, just like the best thing, right? But they're generally not that complicated, but not like dead simple either, right? Like Pong or something. But so I just started making smaller games, kind of sticking to that, and then I tried to learn Godot, which has a bit more of a learning curve. And I just kept trying a little bit and getting impatient and giving up, especially since in Construct they have built-in like movement behaviors and stuff, right? So you don't really need to learn to make something basic in Construct. You don't need to learn like vector math or anything. So I was having a really hard time with that, but then I eventually got it, just after a few tries over the course of a year or something, kind of casually, right? And then I just made a couple shorter Godot games, and after that I decided that I wanted to become an indie game developer, especially since I was starting to use Godot and GitHub, because I was using Construct, right? I'm not saying Construct is a bad engine, but a lot of times it feels just more like a learning tool. I was using Construct, and then I stepped it up to Godot plus actually using version control software, which was a huge game changer, right? And so a little while later, I decided I want to become an independent game developer.
So when did you what age are we talking when you decided, this is it, this is what I want to do?
Last year, so
already
21, yeah.
Nice. So you had so up until that point in Construct and working with Godot, you'd made how many games?
Between Godot and Construct, about 20 or so.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so the biggest thing before Void Wizard, the biggest thing or the longest amount of time I had spent working on something was 2 weeks. That goes for finished games actually, but the longest time I'd actually spent working on something, finished or not, was a couple months off and on. But Void Wizard, yeah, so I learned a lot from Void Wizard, especially mainly the fact that I could make something, I could stick to something for five or 6 months, right? And actually make it not too terrible. But anyways, back to your question. I'm almost done.
No,
I decided I wanted to be an indie developer, but I thought, well, okay, that's not practical. So what I thought is that I become a software developer, like enterprise software developer, to learn programming really good, right? So then I wouldn't even have to think about it, worry about it too much, right? I just already be skilled, and then I could jump in, and like start making games, start learning about like design and stuff. But I talked to my uncle, who is a software engineer, and he was like, "Oh well, if you want to make games, then that's overkill, because you have to learn so much more on the technical side for like not like legit software development, but like enterprise software development. That's what you call it."
Yeah.
So there's still definitely like you do want to learn how to write clean code. For Void Wizard, the code wasn't very clean, but right now I'm working on learning techniques for writing cleaner code.
You made it in Unity, right?
No, Godot.
Oh, you made it in Godot. Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I haven't really touched Unity very much at all. It's still a good engine, I think, even though despite what they did last year with the whole pricing debacle.
Oh yeah, the controversy. I mean, it doesn't change the actual product. It just the optics. It was so bad.
I think it doesn't really change the actual product, but also the whole time you're using it, you're going to be wondering like, are they going to try to pull something else, right? So I'm not saying you shouldn't use Unity.
Yeah.
There's definitely big upsides. For one, everyone uses it, right? So you can get help more easily, or you can get work using Unity too, a lot more easily than Godot. But it just wasn't for me.
Do you think you'll stick with Godot then moving forward, like for projects after Void Wizard?
Yeah, definitely. At least for a while. I do want to try to dabble in a couple other engines. There's one called Defold that looks pretty good. It's more source available than open source, so you can modify it, but you can't like redistribute your own versions of it. I'm pretty sure something like that. But it's made by the people who made Candy Crush, and so it's optimized for mobile, and also it like kind of automatically ports to Switch and I think PlayStation. I'm not sure about Xbox, which is kind of nice. And it looks like a neat engine, at least to check out. But you can do that with Godot too. It's just a little harder. Yeah. Nice.
So that was an awesome answer to the question. Yeah, getting a good understanding of the history there. So I mean, it's been something that you've always been super interested in, but only been a year that you've really decided to go all in, commit to this, and kind of
a bit less, like 8 months or something.
8 months, yeah. So
we'll see.
So can you tell the audience, Void Wizards, what is it? How did this come about? So what are your inspirations?
All right, so a Void Wizard is a fast-paced, first-person wizard roguelike with dual wand wielding, and it's more FPS than roguelike, I'd say, because there's not a big variety of builds, and so I'm kind of pricing it a little on the cheaper side, because you can't keep playing it for like 100 hours like you can with some games, right, that have a whole bunch of upgrades and stuff, some roguelikes, but it's still a good game for the price, and I think the time you'll spend with it will be a good time. And so basically it's kind of like a retro, somewhat like a boomer shooter, not quite like Doom, right? A little more quakey. But you have to move around a bunch, and there's only a few enemy types, but I kind of designed them to work together to give you a hard time.
Oh yeah.
So if you met with like a group of just slimes, it's not going to be that much of a challenge normally, but if it's slimes plus, skeletons especially, right? Skeletons will get you. Then you have two things that have different behaviors that kind of take up space in different ways, so it's a bit more of a challenge.
I always like that approach to design, right? Instead of just flooding like loads of enemies or having like one really difficult like spongy enemy, having like a variety of enemies that you can place in strategic positions that can create like new challenges. I think that's what Void Wizard does really well. I mean, I think it was think it was my second attempt. I got to like the second stage. It's the mine, right?
Yeah.
I got to the mine and then got about 3 rooms in and I got completely wrecked. And I was like, okay, I need to reevaluate. I was like, oh yeah, I'm good at this game. I'm like, I'm hardly... And the thing is, I didn't even realise you could hold down the shoot button. So I was like tapping it every time. And then I was like, oh, hang on a minute. This is... And I'm like spinning around, like jumping. And I love the movement though. Like the movement feels really... Like when you talk about the boomer shooters, it's definitely a fast-paced... kind of exaggeration, you get straight into it, like you're moving around, it's frantic, each room is kind of a fight for survival, and the first couple are fairly straightforward, and then you start getting a few the bounce pads as well. Those rooms were crazy. There was I remember at one point I had completely run out of mana, and so obviously your mana regens and you can fire like one shot at a time, and I had 2 of these wizards on the bounce pads, and I was just trying to hit these wizards and it would take like a couple of seconds to recharge and I'd miss, and then it would recharge and I'd miss, and I was like, it was a battle of attrition. I mean, I won eventually, but I was like, oh god, that was rough. So what was you've kind of touched on some of your inspirations there, some boomer shooters. I mean, have you taken any inspiration from like any existing roguelikes, likes?
My favorite roguelike is probably Nuclear Throne. If you like to suffer, you should play that game for sure. But yeah, it's just like a really good action roguelike. But also I played another FPS wizard roguelike called Ziggurat. I think that's how you say it. Ziggurat. And one problem I had with the game, I think it's a good game, but when you shoot stuff, when you hit stuff, when you kill stuff, I don't think there's nearly enough feedback, because the enemies, like when they die, for example, they ragdoll and flop away, which sounds like it'd be really nice, right? That sounds like that's a lot of feedback, but it's kind of hard to tell when they're ragdolling, so they kind of go like bleh, and then like flop over, and so half the time I was kind of like, did I hit something? So I kind of wanted to make something like Ziggurat, but more focused on kind of that primitive desire to like hit stuff. I want a lot of feedback
some
for
crunch.
when you actually hit stuff. Yeah, and again, I'm not saying Ziggurat is garbage. Definitely not. Check that one out too. I'm doing ads for other games now. This sucks. This sucks. No, but
you're like, my game's really cheap and like, yeah, like
if you're poor and you want to buy a wizard roguelike, buy my game. If you're not poor, look at mine and Ziggurat and see which one you like.
Just buy both, right?
Or buy both, yeah. Or buy mine twice and give a copy to a friend if you're not poor. So
yeah, just increase the amount of wizard likes that are in the world, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's only a good thing. I mean, maybe the sequel could be a Merlin themed roguelike or something, or I don't know.
Yeah. something more complex, I think, because in game design there's kind of a theory behind this complexity barrier, and it's that if a game isn't complex enough, it can't cross over the complexity threshold and become a game that has meaningful play. Like, for example, with tic-tac-toe, if both people know how tic-tac-toe works, it's always going to end in a draw, I'm pretty sure, right?
Yeah.
And so that's boring. If you know the outcome of the game, it's boring, right? But with chess, apparently there's more possible games than there are atoms in the known universe or some BS like that, right? So, like, every game of chess is going to be different, right? And so I think that one thing my game kind of failed to do was hit that complexity barrier when it comes to like making new builds, right? Because there's only basically all you can do is buy a couple upgrades and weapons. And again, I know I'm crapping on my own game, even though I'm kind of trying to promote it here, right? But it does kind of cross over the complexity threshold, because really what I'm doing is hijacking action games, right? Or copying those, because you have to really pay attention to your inputs and your movements, right? And the movements of the enemies. So and you combine that with a little bit of complexity from the weapon builds and the upgrades, and I think you get something all right. But that's definitely something to improve the next time, is what I'm trying to say. More upgrades that also interact with each other. They're coupled. They're like coupled to each other, right? And also they're context dependent, so they affect other things in the game and are affected by other things in the game. So that way you have all these crazy combinations of things that can happen.
Yeah, I mean, I just played recently a game called Hellskate. Review is up on the channel.
Yeah.
If you want to see it.
It was pretty good.
And one of the issues that I had, thank you. One of the issues that I had with the game was that it was roguelike. It was a roguelite, really. It had like constant progression, but the systems weren't meaningful. Like, you would pick up different items and you would maybe get some poison damage, explosive damage, or crit. That was pretty much the only 3 different types of effects, passive effects, that I got as I was playing through the game. And then after like 5 or 6 runs, I was like, well, this is kind of... I've kind of gone through a few different permutations, and they're not all that exciting. I mean, the combat in the game is also fairly straightforward. You just hit stuff and do a special, and you can get by, right? You don't really need any of the extra stuff. And so, from my perspective, it's like you could either just go all in on that, or just not have it. But I think in your case, I think you've got enough variation there to keep the game interesting. But I think that the difficulty of the game is, I think you're completely right. Like the focus on the quick combat and these combat engagements that you find yourself in, and trying to like on the fly puzzle solve, I think is where the game is special, right? And I don't think you need. The game isn't necessarily focused on having a cracked build or having loads of different wand variations. It's about like, I'm in this room right now, there are all these different enemies trying to get me, I have mana and I have health, and I've got to try and navigate my way through this to get...
The thing is, though, Steam users love that kind of crap, though. They eat that stuff up. And I'm not... Like, I like that kind of stuff, too. So it's definitely something, for the next roguelike, definitely more of an emphasis on the builds. But the problem with that, too, is that, at least I find a problem with a lot of roguelikes, like more recently, especially like Vampire Survivors, Brotato, they only have an emphasis on the builds. I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, but when you have a guy in an arena fighting other stuff, like, the combat itself, I think, should be interesting, right? And you do have to make decisions, but the only decision is like where to slowly move to.
Vampire Survivors is so far on the other side of the spectrum, right? Where like you are literally just selecting your skills and you're just navigating. And sure, there's skill towards navigating through like the environment and avoiding enemies, but really the skill is the understanding of the game, right? Like what works well. Getting like the luck of the
They're good games. They're good games, but
it's like it's
that's my gripe with them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And how would you say, in terms of like your development then so far? I mean, how has that gone? You mentioned, I know we spoke previously. Has it been 5-6 months you've been working on it now? Okay,
yeah, we're back now. So it cut out right when you were asking me about my development so far.
Yeah. So yeah, go ahead. Next, it was 5 months you mentioned, right? So 5-6 months you've been working on it. How has that been going so far? What's the journey been like for you?
It's been pretty good. I did make a video about the journey more recently. If you're interested in that, if you want to have a look, I go in a bit more of detail, kind of dramatize it a little bit, but it's fun. But yeah, it's been pretty good. I think in terms of like the development life cycle, one thing I'd like to change more is two things kind of. One, spend more time prototyping and trying out various ideas. Because at first, I was like, okay, I'm going to make a roguelike because I like roguelikes, Steam like roguelikes, everyone's going to be happy. And so I made a breakout or brick breaker roguelike where you have the ball and the paddle. And so I tried a couple variations of that, and it just wasn't that great. I was like, yeah, okay, maybe I should scrap this. And the thing about prototypes too is that wasn't really a prototype. I just started making that game. And so when you do prototypes, what you should do is you should make a mechanical prototype that has programmer art, if any art at all, right? If you have to like scribble a little stick figure or something, or you can just use rectangles or whatever, but just mechanical prototype. And then you have visual prototypes. The reason you don't do a mechanical and visual prototype in one thing is because that's called, do you know what that's called?
A game?
That's called a game. Yeah, exactly. That's called making the game. So that's kind of
a whole lot of time.
Yeah, exactly. So after that, I didn't learn my lesson. I was like, okay, that was not necessarily too complicated, but I think a bit too new and a bit too original, and maybe a bit too complicated. So I was like, well, okay, I'll make an FPS roguelike, which kind of sounds more complicated in a way. I don't know. But I think in my mind is a bit simpler, right? And I think it actually is. We cut out again, but we're back. So I decided to make an FPS wizard roguelike, and that, it turned out good. I think I got kind of lucky with that, but I should have prototyped that. I should have learned my lesson, right? I think if I had prototyped several more ideas, I could have made something even better. So if you're trying to make an actual game that you want to be good, if it's not just a game jam or something, prototype, and separate the visual from the mechanical prototypes, like we talked about. But it just even though it sounds more complicated, like an FPS roguelike versus a brick breaker roguelike, it's closer gameplay to games I've actually played, right? And there is actually a brick breaker roguelike. I think it's called Whacker Ball. It's on Steam. Not my game. I played a little bit of it after I started on my breakout roguelike. I looked on Steam and I saw theirs, and I was like, oh, well, it's already being done too, so I don't know how big of a sell that is.
There was a brick breaker game that I played when I was a kid, and I think it was on PlayStation 1, and it was, there was like loads of different characters you could have. There was a full-on story. There was like environments that were built. I cannot remember what it was called. I won't Google it now because we're in the middle of. Oh no! It was crazy. There was like this little pink like bat that had been stolen, kind of like Princess Peach. It was wild. It was really good. It was actually really good. I need to dig that out and find.
I need to see like a brick breaker drama, or like a soapbox or soap opera. Yeah.
We need to take this conversation offline, because this could be the next big thing, right? And
they're going to steal our ideas
on this. No, absolutely. Okay, so kind of coming back to your prototyping process then. So what type of prototype did you end up doing for Void Wizard? Did you go for the mechanical one, or did you go for the art first? I'm assuming it was mechanical.
Sorry, I don't know if I made it clear enough, but I did not learn my lesson. I did not prototype at all.
Oh, you didn't?
No, I didn't.
Oh,
I was
right.
kind of like,
Because you said
we got to get. I started making like the more mechanical, like, or the actual like software structure of the game, right? But instead of doing like crappy fast code, prototype code, I try to make it kind of decent. So I'm like, okay, let's figure out how the project's going to be structured. We're going to start just adding in stuff, adding in features like movement system, health and damage system, weapon system, room spawning system, and then I started making assets for the enemies and stuff and giving them AI.
So you went straight into it as soon as you started.
Yeah, basically straight into it. So do not do that. Okay, do not do that. Make as lean of prototypes as you can. Like if you could do it on paper or something, right? If that's faster, do that. But yeah, that was stupid. So don't do that. Don't do what I did.
Yeah, when you said make more prototypes, I assumed that you prototyped the first one, but no, you just went straight in.
No,
and went for it. But look
actually,
where you are now,
there's
though.
this.
Like you've.
Oh, there's this very successful game developer. He's been doing it really a lot longer than I have, to be fair. Also, he's really smart. He's called Jonas Tyroller. I don't know if that's how you actually say his last name. I'm pretty sure he's German. But one of his latest videos, actually his latest video, was titled "This Problem Changes Your Perspective on Game Dev." And so it's actually about prototyping and trying to come up with good ideas that are going to be fun and people are going to buy. And so basically it talks about different kind of search algorithms you can employ. Because basically use the analogy, imagine you're a captain of a ship and you're searching for treasure at the bottom of a lake, right? There's treasure somewhere, there's a few things of treasure. You're just trying to search for the deepest part of the lake, for the best fish or whatever. And so what most people do is they'll just kind of search around randomly until they hit something. But what he recommended is, and also like as you search around randomly, you can kind of get some data, like over here isn't as deep as over here, so maybe try in the first spot, right? But even then, people just kind of look around randomly. But what he suggests is kind of look around and spread it out, and just like kind of a wide area. And then it doesn't have to be super wide area. You don't have to go, well, okay, let's try making a match 3 game. Now let's try making a platformer. Now let's try making a roguelike. That might be a little too wide, but kind of broaden your search a little bit. And then once you find something that's kind of deep, you find the deepest part, which is the best part, right? You start searching around that area, right? That was one thing he suggested. So I recommend that video a lot. If you want to make, if you want to actually try to make something that's good, try to find the correct idea.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting into the philosophy of ideation at this point, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Like, should we go for something that is, popular, something that's easy to make, something that you enjoy? All of these things are super.
Well, I think it's all of those things, yeah, because it has to be not necessarily easy to make, but you have to be able to do it well, right? So you have to find the intersection of things where you can make, things that you can make, things that you want to make, and things that other people want you to make, right? For example, I can make a 2D pixel art platformer. That wouldn't be my least favorite genre to make. I'm not dying to make one, but I wouldn't hate making one. But since I'm trying to, release on Steam a lot, because that's the most viable platform for PC, right? Steam users don't really like platformers, and people say, okay, well, what about Celeste or Pizza Tower? But those are just
Hollow
really,
Knight,
really good games.
Shovel Knight.
Yeah. Well, Metroidvanias are a bit different. So Steam users like Metroidvanias quite a bit. But then that's the thing too, right? Metroidvanias are a lot harder to make than your typical platformer, because you have to make first a platformer plus upgrades and like branching paths. And guess what? I don't even like Metroidvanias that much. I don't think it's a bad genre. Obviously not. A lot of people love Metroidvanias, right? But I just don't like them. I just don't find them fun, right? So like I tried playing Hollow Knight and I just got like too lost too many times, and I was like, okay, it's a really great game, it's really beautiful, yeah, it's really fun so far, but
you don't want to make it. That's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's a really good piece of advice. Like, what I'm trying to do with these types of conversations is essentially mine, the insight and essentially mine the gold. Pardon the pun, because you've got gold in your game. And try and find those little nuggets, right? Like go for what you know, go for what you enjoy. Make a game that you would want to play. This is one thing that
that you want to play, and also that there's a market for it. If you're trying to do it commercially, right? If it's a hobby or whatever, like, make whatever you want. Like, it doesn't matter. Go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's I know I recently watched the developer interview for something Wicked. Oh, what's that new game by the Ori developers? Moon Studios.
I don't know.
Every time I think of it, I think of Something Wicked This Way Comes, which is the novel by Ray Bradbury.
Yeah. So it's by Moon Studios. Let me look.
Yeah, what's it called?
Let me see what they're up to. Yeah. Oh, come on. There we go.
Something Wicked, I think it's called, or something like that. But I remember I was watching the video.
I don't know.
And one of the main devs basically said, like, I wanted to make something that didn't exist, right? Like, there's a certain genre of game that I really wanted to play, and no one had made it. And then I got to a point where I was like, okay, well, I'm going to make it then, because no one else is doing it. And it's like a top-down Souls-like, but it's not quite a Souls-like. It's yeah, it looks fantastic, but it was really interesting that way of thinking was like, well, this is my dream game. This is what I would love to play. And I know that was what happened with Stardew Valley as well, right? You know, again, name forgets me. It's late here in the UK. But he really wanted to make
Concerned Ape.
Concerned Ape. Yeah, that was it. And Harvest Moon. He just loved Harvest Moon. And thought that he could do it better, and that they hadn't really iterated or improved on Harvest Moon. And he was like, well, I'm going to make my version of it. And yeah, I mean, I think pick a genre that you love, fill the gap that you think is vacant, and usually that's somewhat of a recipe to get you there, right? As long as the execution's good. So
what I hear though is that a lot of game developers, I think, like, disproportionately are like Nintendo fans. And so Nintendo has, their platformers and their kart racers, and they have different genres from what your typical Steam user plays. And I'm not saying, you should just only do what the market wants. Again, I think it's that intersection, right? What you like to make, can make, and what people want. But there's, I think, like, the median earnings of like a roguelike was like many times that of a 2D platformer, right? Or even a 3D platformer. Just because Steam likes those kind of games, especially, probably even more so, like city builders and colony sims, and especially roguelike deck builders. Like, have you seen how much money Baltro's made? I don't think we have actual numbers, but
it was a million copies sold. I know already.
So they've made millions of dollars, right? I think they're charging $20 for it. And of course,
it's like
Steam games go on sale
£15.
Yeah. So it's a lot easier to make something that's financially viable in one of those genres or similar genre than, like, especially like a match 3 game, apparently. And this is just all stuff I've heard about, but it kind of makes sense, because I do see a lot of like 2D platformers that just don't do that well at all, right? And also, one thing also, you should take everything I say with a grain of salt, though, because this is my first game, and I only have like 200 wish lists, which translates to like 20 sales. And I'm not charging a lot at all for my game, so if I make any money at all, it's it's not going to be very much for the time spent on it.
Well, I mean, that kind of leads on to my next question then. So what is success then for this project? I mean, it's your first game on Steam. That's a big thing, right? Like, there's a lot to go through, setting up the store.
Not a ton, but I think it's going to go faster next time, because I'll know, just how to do it a little better. I'll be more familiar with it, and also know what not to do. So pretty much just the biggest thing is learning. The more I can learn, the better right now. Also, like, my initial thought was, if I can make enough money to not have to get like a part-time job and make the next game, that would be success. But I'm not giving up yet, but I don't think that's going to happen. based off of my wish lists especially, right? And that's okay. Like, you just get a part-time job and you suck it up and you can still make games, right? It might even be kind of fun, right? Because I have had like actual jobs before, and that kind of helps you appreciate, like, if you're trying to run a business and you have to work a side job, you're probably not going to like the side job very much, but it's going to make you work harder on the business, and it's also going to be more enjoyable when you are actually working on the thing.
I'm doing this now, and I work full time, right? So this is early mornings, writing scripts, recording audio. Playing games, like, woe is me. Playing games. Playing games, then having like coherent thoughts about them that are worth sharing.
Exactly.
So it's interesting that, like, the motivation, even though maybe based on the predictions and based on the wish lists, that you might not necessarily hit the goals that you might have had initially, that hasn't dampened the desire, and it's like, okay, let's get back on the horse and take what I've learned into my new project, take the following that I've developed, because you are on social media and you do have a YouTube channel. I've checked it out.
Thank you.
And
that's the biggest one.
All of your socials,
YouTube and Discord. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll share all of that information in the description. You send that over to me, and I'll put that in the description. So anyone that's watching,
what you can do, actually, if you want, you can just go to antiquegeargames.com. And right now, I'm basically using that as like a link tree, so you can find you can find my YouTube channel and my Discord channel if you want to join that. Come chat with me. Thanks though. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that most indie studios on Steam release only one game, right? So I think it's like 75% of studios, something like that, only release one. And the thing is, there's so many benefits to releasing multiple games, other than like learning and actually improving, because it's really only one big benefit, and it's that you actually have a track record of being able to ship games. Because what I hear is that can help you a lot to be more likely to be published by a publisher, if that's something you're going for, if that's part of your strategy. Because they can see, even if they didn't make $1 gazillion, this person is able to ship games, especially if they have positive reviews generally, right? But they're able to actually finish, because that's one of the bigger barriers, right? There's starting, finishing, and then getting enough traction. So you're already through one of those barriers, right? So you've proved to the publishers, basically guaranteed, I can finish whatever game I'm pitching to you, right? And also you just get better too. Sorry, what?
Yeah. Well, like you said, if most studios, obviously I don't know the percentage for that, but if
something
most
like
studios
75.
only release that's crazy then, because if you release a second game, you're in the top 25% of all studios. And
you're ahead of 3/4 of people. Yeah.
And if you release 4 or 5 games, and maybe you do one every year for the next 5 years, and you're sharpening your skills, and
you're probably gonna make it. Yeah, you're probably.
I mean, it's definitely a challenging environment, and game dev, especially when you're going for an ambitious project, it's a big risk, right? Because if you can take 2 or 3 years out of your life to build something, it could be great, but if you don't have the following, that's why it's great to come on, channels like this, to be able to kind of share your story, exposure, and be able to tell people about the game, and then also, your own channel is promoting it as well. Your devlogs are great. I've really enjoyed the ones that I've watched, and
thank you.
Yeah. So, have you got any plans then after Void Wizard? Like, have you got another project that you've been messing around with? Any of these prototypes that we've been speaking about?
Well, I haven't really done any prototyping really. Yet. So it's definitely a practice I need to actually practice more. But it's basically, number one, like study, right? Like right now, I'm just kind of dividing my day into two parts. There's kind of marketing Void Wizard, making sure it's all good for release, just interacting with my small but great community. If you guys are watching, I love you. I love you personally. And then the other half is like learning various subjects like business, marketing, code architecture, game design, and one other. Oh yeah, mathematics. Because I suck at math, so I want to actually be able to.
There's a lot. Yes,
want to be able to design something that's good, something that's more complex, and so, like having a good grasp of like probability and all kinds of stuff, right? So that's kind of another mountain to climb, but that's probably going to take a little while. But it's basically going to be a mix of, and this is what I'd probably recommend, learning, just like more formal study, right? Like reading game design books and researching like, code architecture, like what people are saying about different ways to structure your projects, for one thing, right? Like that's something I've been looking into a lot lately. So there's like more formal learning, and I'm not talking about college, but like actually opening a book and learning on your own, and then learning by doing, right? So there's basically reading and making games. Excuse me. So a healthy mix of the two. And for game design,
it's good to see that you're investing. Oh, go on.
Oh, God. I just want to say real quick, for game design, I'm reading. I reached for it, but it's propping up my laptop right now. I'm reading Rules of Play by Solon and Eric Zimmerman. Solon and Zimmerman. And so that's kind of like a college textbook almost. Like it's pretty in depth. But I've just started another book called The Art of Game Design. And so the guy who wrote the book, I think he made Toontown. I haven't played Toontown, but that was like an MMO for Disney where you like play as cartoon characters. I know that was really successful. A lot of people love that. You probably recognize a screenshot or something. I haven't played it, and I do, right? So it's pretty big. And also, he used to be a circus juggler, and juggling is a small hobby of mine. So that kind of sold me on the book too. But the interesting thing about that book, and also Rules of Play, but especially that book, is they provide a lot of lenses for you to look through and look at game design with. So like games as systems of complexity, or games as social play, or games as systems of information theory systems or something, right? At least having a surface level understanding of a lot of these lenses can be a good way to analyze games, right? Because it's like, if maybe like you're looking at a game more through a mechanical lens, like how is this interesting? There's no strategy here. But if you're looking at it through maybe some more experiential lens, like games as social play or something. I haven't gotten to that part, full disclosure, yet. But it's like, okay, maybe there's no real strategy or anything, but like it's just a really nice way to hang out with friends, right? Like you build a world in Minecraft, or hop on VR chat and make fun of people or something. I don't know. But anyway, so if you're wanting to learn,
really interesting.
Yeah. So if you're wanting to learn game design, I'd probably recommend those books, even though I haven't finished them. But they look cool.
Yeah. No. I mean that sounds really interesting to be able to get a foundational understanding. Like I think it's one of the things about video games is it's still a new industry.
Yeah.
Like film has been around for over 100 years, but video games have been around for half the time. And only really 20 25 years in this iteration of what we would call gaming, right? We're not playing Pong
games
anymore.
in the 80s are not bad, but they're ancient.
We've got ray trace reflections
weird
now, right? And I think one thing that I find really interesting is that games are moving closer to something like film, right? But I think that the thing that makes games stand out is the mechanical complexity, right? Like we've done the interactive
I think that's part
movie
of it.
game, right? Yeah, well, I mean, we've done the interactive movie game, right? We've done Uncharted, we've done The Last of Us, and I enjoyed both of those games, like the new Spider-Man, for example. But mechanically, they're not really pushing too many boundaries, right? We've kind of hit a bit of a brick wall in terms of that kind of cinematic side of things, and I think where gaming really does expand is in the mechanics, is a new system or a new way to play, and I think it makes complete sense, right? Like as the industry is maturing, we're figuring things out, but it's really great to have that foundational knowledge and approach that from a mechanical perspective. We talked about Balatro, right? Face value, Balatro looks kind of boring. Like, it looks like a poker game, and poker's boring, right, to a lot of people, but it's really a completely different take on the game of poker. It's like poker but with crazy modifiers, and it's not even really poker, you know? It turns into a completely different type of game. And that's foundationally just mechanics, right? And so it's really interesting that that's the emphasis that you're putting on your learning right now, is not like, how can I make, the pores on my character look more realistic? How can I have realistic hair animation? It's like, no, like, what is inherently fun?
Okay, so I just want to touch on my opinion about what separates games from other forms of media real quick, and I think that's mechanics is a really good answer, I think, but also, if more specifically, I think it's player agency, because when you read a movie watch a movie or read a book, develop dyslexia, your decisions are either continue consuming the content or not, and maybe fast forward and rewind, right? But with games, the mechanics are kind of the vehicle that allows for player agency, right? So you can go in a lot of different places, right? And about putting an emphasis on learning about how game mechanics work and how to make them good, make them goodly. I think for me, that's a good thing, because I'm a bit more interested in that. I do like, the audio-visual side, of course, as well, but it's not as interesting as the mechanical for me. But generally, there's kind of like two kind of games that do well. There's games that are like really beautiful, and they don't really need as much mechanical depth. They need some, right? Otherwise, it's like, go look at a painting, right? But their success is largely attributed to how great they look. Yeah, watch a movie, whatever. Watch a Ghibli movie; those look great. Those are beautiful. And then the other kind of game that does really well is really mechanically interesting, satisfying games, right? Whether it be like something that's really deep, or maybe it doesn't have to be deep, but the few rules that are there, even if they don't allow for a huge breadth of play, the narrow things that you can do are just really fun, right? And so I forgot what my point was, but I said that stuff.
It's deep systems you can chew on, right? It's something that you can invest yourself into, and there's a level of complexity there, and there's a level of
there's a lot of aha moments
with the mechanics. Yeah. Absolutely.
Right, yeah, because that's
absolutely. I mean,
that's one way to one way to make players happy, right? Is have a lot of aha moments. Like just today, I was kind of chilling a bit because it's Saturday. I usually consider Saturdays kind of like a half day, but I'll probably quit that practice after I get a part-time job, which I'm assuming I will do unless the game does really well. But I was just playing Minecraft, right? And I was making a base that's actually secret base hidden behind this really weird redstone door where you have to solve like a miniature puzzle to get through. Once you know how to do the puzzle, you can get through it really quickly. And then once you get into that base, then then you have to solve another puzzle to get to the real secret base. And so that was like each little redstone system I made, right? There's a bunch of little aha moments, right? Even if I didn't find the true solution, I was like, oh, I think this is the solution. Even though it was like, hot psych, not it. It gave me that little aha moment, right? But then it took it away, and then I was like, okay, well now I want that aha moment again, right? I want that epiphany. And so yeah, I just kept going until I found the right solution to make those doors and stuff. And so that's kind of like the mechanical side, bringing the aha moment, right? But then after I'd finished that, this is a multiplayer server, so I was playing with a friend of mine, right? Hi Patrick, if you're watching this. And so we were working on our medieval village, and he knew about layer 1 of the base, right? Or secret layer 1 of the base. So there's like, basically it's like behind or underneath the storage system, or our storage area. So you go into a storage area, and then you go down a secret path behind a secret door, and you go to the base. So I'd already showed him that. He thought it was really cool. And then I was like, hey, there's a puzzle you have to solve to get to the true secret base. Don't break any blocks or anything, but try to solve the puzzle. And he didn't, because it's kind of tricky. He's smart. He's really smart. Probably smarter than me. But I eventually opened it up to him, and he was like, what? Right? Basically, there was like another secret door in like a place you wouldn't think, and so that surprised him, right? And sorry that this was so long, but I bring that up because I thought it's a really interesting example, because you took the mechanical. What happened is I had the mechanical nature of the redstone, right? That was giving me the aha moments that made building it satisfying, and then I had the more like social, experiential. Like if you look at it from a more experiential lens, me showing Patrick this secret base, and seeing his reaction, and I'm like, ha, you didn't know this was here, got him. That's another form of play, right? Or even something like, I've been playing 20 questions with my little sisters a lot lately, right? It's a game where one person thinks of something, and the other has 20 yes or no questions to try to figure it out. And so mechanically, that's not super deep, right? You just have to pick the question that eliminates the most possible outcomes, right? It's conceptually very simple, right? But you have to use your recall memory and like logic and stuff. But why that game is fun for me is not because of the mechanics. Because again, if it was a game where you're like, okay, eliminate as many possibilities as possible and that's it, right? That's not that interesting if it's purely mechanical. But what is fun is thinking of something that you think is going to be really hard, and you're like, aha, I've got you now, and then being surprised when somebody figures it out, right? Like, aha, a gumball machine. Yeah, nobody's gonna think of that, and then they do, and you're like, what? Or you get the satisfaction when they're nowhere near guessing it. You point and laugh.
I think that what you're touching on there, I think there is definitely a thirst for that for gamers at the moment. I mean, tying it to something that's a bit more topical right now, like Dragon's Dogma 2 has just come out, and the general consensus is that, the general consensus is that a lot of people that are playing that game are gonna fall off it pretty hard, because they've been essentially trained and raised on a diet of Ubisoft map markers and
snap.
All of that type of stuff. And in Dragon's Dogma, it's like someone's missing, go and find them, and you don't have a map marker telling you where they are, and you don't even have you have to like walk around and speak to villagers and try and figure out. And it's one of the great things about CRPGs. Like I had that when I played Divinity Original Sin, where there's like 8 different ways to complete one quest, and you don't even know where to go. Like the city's fairly small, so you can kind of go around the city and ask people questions and interview them, and through, you know, eliminating various targets and stuff, you can kind of progress the game forward in that way. But actually using your brain in a creative way, in the way that like old school like Morrowind and Oblivion would give you like tasks and just figure it out. Like we're not going to tell you exactly where it is, and you know the Souls games do that to an extent. Dragon's Dogma is doing that, and I think gamers generally are looking, you know, people are wanting more mechanical complexity, and not everyone. Like your average, and I don't like to use this phrase that often, but your average like casual gamer wants something that they can maybe sit back, not have to think too much when they play it, kind of get like
Flappy Bird, Angry Bird.
Yeah, I'm even thinking stuff like God of War, you know, like very cinematic. It's not too difficult to find where you've got to go. Like, you know, it looks great. But these games, I definitely gravitate.
I haven't played it, but it's not going to be like as intensive of a learning curve, obviously, as something like Dwarf Fortress, which I also haven't played because that game scares me.
Yeah. Yeah, we were speaking about this. Yeah, like Dwarf Fortress, RimWorld, Factorio, like they're types of games that you even like Grand Strategy, like there's a learning curve to all of that. But once you go through that initial initiation period, it's like nothing else in the medium, right? And I think we're definitely starting to see now that there are, as gaming grows, there is definitely more of a hardcore audience that is really wanting this. I mean, I know Dragon's Dogma 2 has absolutely killed it. It's like Capcom's best-selling game, and they released Resident Evil 4 remake last year. And they've released Resident Evil 8 recently. So that's crazy. And this is what people would call, like hardcore, like to a certain extent. Like even fast traveling. I mean, there's a whole, we won't go into this now, but there's a whole farce around the microtransactions and being able to fast travel in that game and stuff. But it's not a game that is designed with the player's welfare in mind, right? It's a game that's like, this is the world. You've got to defeat this. You've got to overcome this. And I think that's, you know, when we start having people that are building games from a mechanical foundation, like, and you know, doing the research like you're doing now, and we have more indie devs that are looking to approach gaming and game development in that way. Hopefully, we will stumble onto like new genres, little gaps, little pockets. And you know, the industry will start to move forward as a result of that. So thank you for your work.
No sweat.
Yes, we've already kind of so we've already touched on so we've got your website. I'll still include all of your links and all your socials in the description as well.
Nice.
Yeah, follow Vincent on everything. His videos are great. I'm going to be dropping a review. I'm going to be dropping a review for your game next week. My schedule is quite busy, but it's going to drop. It's going to drop, and I'll let you guys know. Do you have any final words, Vincent, before we sign off?
Give me money so I don't have to get a job, so I can be lazy and just make games. Thank you. Wishlist Void Wizard. Subscribe to Lucid Visions. And if you want to make games, give me $1 million and I'll mentor you. Even though I haven't made a successful game, I'll teach you how to make a successful game. That's all.
Wonderful. Oh, well, I mean, I don't have to ask you guys to subscribe anymore because Vincent's already done it for me. So thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much, Vincent.
No problem. Bye.